Okay, so you guys sent us this transcript from TextChasm, a YouTube channel, and it features Elon Musk, and it brings up some interesting points about the Social Security database and,
Okay.
all the stuff connected to non-citizens voting, a lot of stuff that we need to dive into.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a lot to unpack in this deep dive. The claims in the video about Social Security numbers, how non-citizens are getting them, and what that might mean for things like voting and social services.
So right out of the gate, the video drops a pretty big number, 20 million people marked as alive in the Social Security database, but actually dead. That's a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, does the video give any details about how they came up with that number or like where the problems might be coming from in such a huge database?
Right. It's a big claim, but they don't really go into the specifics of their methodology. Large databases like that are always going to have some issues with keeping things perfectly updated. I mean, think about reporting delays, bureaucratic stuff. That could all contribute to some discrepancies, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Then they move on to what they're calling a strange trend in Social Security numbers being given to non-citizens. They're talking about a jump from 270,000 in 2021 to a whopping 2.1 million in 2024. I mean, even without getting into their whole thing, that's a big increase. Did they explore like policy changes or anything happening with immigration during those years that might explain that?
Well, that's definitely something to think about. I mean, a jump that big could be from all kinds of things, right? Maybe there were changes to immigration laws or how applications are processed, or even some big event in the world that brought more people in who needed social security numbers. Understanding all that would help us see if the video's interpretation makes sense.
Okay, so next the video talks about what it says are the typical ways that non-citizens come into the U.S. and get those Social Security numbers. People coming in through ports of entry, claiming fear, starting asylum cases, others crossing the border and getting what's called a notice to appear or an NTA from immigration court.
Hmm.
And the video emphasizes that there's a big backlog in these courts, like 6 years on average. Why is that backlog important for their argument?
Well, that's a crucial part of their point. It means people could be in the U.S. for years while they wait for their case to be decided. Regardless of whether they end up staying or not, the video seems to be implying that this gives them more time to get into other systems.
So now the video gets really specific. It claims that once someone's in the country through these means, they apply for a work document, and then boom, the Social Security Administration just automatically mails them a Social Security number. No interview, no ID required.
Is that how it actually works for all non-citizens, or are there like special cases where that might happen? Well, to get a social security number as a non-citizen who's allowed to work in the U.S., you usually have to apply and provide documents to prove who you are and that you're allowed to work. There might be some exceptions, but saying there's no interview, no ID for everyone is probably not accurate. It'd be good to know what specific situations they're talking about and if they have proof.
Then the video makes a pretty big accusation. It says that a previous administration set up a massive, large-scale program to bring in undocumented immigrants, specifically to change voting patterns and create a one-party system. That's a serious claim. Do they provide any solid evidence to back that up?
Well, that kind of accusation needs some serious evidence. The video is basically saying this is how they interpret things. But seeing a trend doesn't automatically mean there's some deliberate plan with political motives.
Right.
Would need to look at the specific policies they mention, internal communications if they have any, and consider other possible explanations for the trends.
Okay. Then they talk about non-citizens receiving benefits, specifically Medicaid. They say they looked at a group of 5.5 million people who they identified as having entered the country through these pathways and found 1.3 million already enrolled in Medicaid. They suggest the same thing is happening with other benefits, too.
Yeah.
What are the rules for non-citizens getting Medicaid? And did the video even discuss whether these people actually qualify?
Usually, there are very specific rules for non-citizens to get Medicaid. It often depends on their immigration status, and they might have to wait a certain amount of time. It would be important to know the specific immigration statuses of those 1.3 million people and whether those statuses make them eligible for Medicaid in the first place. Just being a non-citizen doesn't automatically mean you can get those benefits.
All right, so now we get to what is probably the most controversial part, the claims about non-citizens registering to vote and actually voting. The video says they took a sample, found people in this population registered, and even identified some who they claim actually voted. They say these cases have been sent to Homeland Security investigations.
So, what are the laws about non-citizens voting, and what are the usual checks in place for voter registration?
Yeah, so federal law says non-citizens can't vote in federal elections. States have their own rules about voter registration, and there are processes to check if people are eligible, but the details vary. This claim about non-citizens voting is a serious one. We need to look carefully at the data and the processes meant to prevent this from happening.
The video brings up another disturbing thing, the connection to human trafficking. They say traffickers have made something like 13 to 15 billion dollars from people crossing the border in this whole system. They paint a picture of exploitation and people being forced into debt. No matter what you think about the other claims, the human cost here is just awful. Absolutely. It's a huge problem that criminal organizations could be taking advantage of vulnerable people for money. The amount of money they're talking about shows how big this illegal activity might be and the suffering it causes.
The video then mentions some legislative stuff, like New York's attempt to give voting rights to undocumented immigrants and California's move to expand health care to all undocumented immigrants. They're using these examples to support their argument that creating financial incentives encourages illegal immigration. What do you think about how these state policies might connect to the bigger picture of immigration?
Well, state policies can definitely have an effect, and there's a lot of debate about whether they influence migration patterns and how resources are used. People who support these policies often talk about humanitarian reasons and the potential economic benefits of including these populations in the system. Those who are against them often worry about the financial burden and the possibility that they might attract more unauthorized immigration.
And then they come back to the integrity of the voting system. They really push for voter ID, comparing it to things like needing an ID to buy alcohol or fly or even the vaccine mandates. They're basically saying that if we need ID for those things, we definitely need it for voting. What are the different views on voter ID laws and how they might affect both election security and people's ability to vote?
Yeah, the voter ID debate is complicated. People in favor of it say it makes elections more secure and reduces the chances of fraud. Those who are against it worry that it could prevent some people from voting, especially those in marginalized communities who might have a harder time getting the required ID. There's a lot of discussion and research going on to figure out the real impact of these laws on both voter turnout and election integrity.
Okay, so to sum up, this tech chasm video throws out a lot of big claims. A huge increase in Social Security numbers going to non-citizens, tons of people coming into the country in specific ways, a major backlog in immigration courts, and allegations of non-citizens getting benefits like Medicaid and even registering and voting.
Yeah, they also argue that the Social Security number is basically being used as a national ID to get access to all kinds of benefits. They're worried about how easy they say it is to get one, and they highlight the huge amount of money supposedly being made by human traffickers through all of this.
And they wrap up by saying we need things like voter ID to fix what they see as a broken voting system, comparing it to all those other situations where we have to show ID.
It's interesting when you think about this video and the claims made, it really brings up the importance of having secure identification and verification processes in our society. I mean, this is what Stonefly has been all about for over 2 decades. They are the pioneers in data storage, backup, and security. Their knowledge of things like SAN, NAS, S3 object storage, and all those advanced security technologies really tackles the challenges of managing and protecting tons of sensitive information. And these issues are at the heart of what the video is talking about.
For sure. It makes you think about how important it is to make sure data is accurate and secure across all these different government systems to keep things running smoothly. From Social Security to healthcare to voter registration, we need strong tech solutions and tight security protocols. And that's where companies like Stonefly come in. They've been leading the way in data management and security applications for a long time. Their work in AI and security is super relevant to all this because it's all about finding those red flags, stopping fraud, and making sure data is reliable. If you want to learn more about how Stonefly can help with all this, you can reach out to them at sales@stonefly.com.
Thinking about all the stuff in the video makes you realize that we have to have secure ways to identify people and verify information. It's absolutely crucial in today's world. And as technology keeps changing, we need to adapt our ways of protecting sensitive data and making sure our important systems are trustworthy. And that's where Stonefly comes in. They've been pushing for innovation in data storage and security for so long, and they're a major player in making sure things are done right.
That's a really good point. The security of our IDs and how we access benefits and vote are definitely super important areas. And when you consider how much data storage and security technology has advanced, especially thanks to companies like Stonefly, who've been doing this for over 20 years, it makes you wonder what's possible in the future for even more secure and dependable systems.
We encourage you guys to dig into these topics and think about how important it is to have secure and reliable data management in all parts of our lives. Remember, Stonefly has been a leader in these areas for a long time. They offer cutting-edge solutions in SAN, NAS, S3 object storage, backup and disaster recovery, cloud, and advanced AI and security applications and technology. And if you're interested, you can contact sales@stonefly.com.